No, well, the depth of the water isn't any indication as to whether it will hold a crocodile or not. I mean, I come right into shallow water. This beach shelves off reasonably steeply. We did have a fatal attack up the beach here about 2 or 3 kilometres just over 12 months ago. Admittedly, it was at night. And of course, crocodiles are nocturnal hunters, and you are at risk if you sit on the beach close to the water at night time, because they can move up to within a couple of feet of you, and when they get to that particular stage, you've got no chance. Some people get lucky, of course, when it comes to close encounters with crocodiles. What this woman was doing was retrieving a lure with a hand line. In that situation, what you try to do is to keep the lure close to the surface of the water, and the only way you can do it is to actually bend down and pull the lure in with a hand line close to the water. A crocodile followed the lure in and almost took her head off as she lifted her head up off the water. So she was very lucky.
Just good timing.
Just good timing, that's all it was.
The Gulf of Carpentaria and the land around its edge is like nowhere else in Australia. Right around the coastal fringe, the land is crisscrossed by channels and levee banks linking flood basins, billabongs and riverbeds. Closer to the shoreline, the channelling works both ways, and seawater turns much of the land into barren salt pans and wetlands. An expanded version of this intricate pattern spreads inland over 2/3 of Cape York and an immense area further south. The country right around the Gulf of Carpentaria is a massive floodplain, sometimes called the Carpentaria Basin, sometimes the Gulf Plains or the Gulf Country. But the new name for this region is the Gulf Savannah Territory. Literally, a savanna describes grassy plains in a hot climate. Locals describe it as flat, and fairly level. The heat is tropical, but there's nothing to compare with the lushness of the country on the east side of Cape York Peninsula, or the spectacle of the escarpment country in the Northern Territory to the west. But vast, empty plains shimmering with heat is a spectacle in its own right. Not all of it's like this, a desiccated expanse of sand and salt. Further inland, the Gulf country turns into open forest, sparse compared with other places. But it does have its patches of greenery and colour around billabongs that have survived the end of the wet season. The first serious attempts to populate the Gulf were based around cattle, and the town of Normanton grew to export the beef by ship down the Norman River. The town was laid out with big plans, wide streets, and expensive, substantial buildings, all designed for the days when Normanton would be a great northern city. In the 1880s, business was good. Cattle were being grazed, copper was being mined, and everything took an even better turn when gold was discovered inland at Croydon. Even Burns Philp, one of the really big pioneer trading companies, was convinced it was on a good thing in Normanton. They built that huge store. It was designed to service all the Gulf and even as far as Papua New Guinea. Well, the store still stands, but not much else ever grew up around it. Normanton's dreams of greatness petered out with the gold, and it eventually became much like any small country town anywhere in Australia. But with a few differences. Isolated from the rest of the country's rail network, the Gulflander stayed on as one of Australia's most unusual railways. Train driver Col Shepherd takes this living relic of the past on a once-a-week service from Normanton to Croydon. It's like driving an old truck, a 4-speed crash gearbox and a reliable old diesel engine. It's a good thing there's no steering wheel. Cole seems to need an extra hand just to change gears. When work started on the railway, it was supposed to link Normanton with Cloncurry in the south. But when gold was discovered, it abruptly changed direction and the line ran west instead. The train is based in a railway station that is itself a well-preserved and well-restored relic of the past. Under the original archways of the shaded concourse, ageing advertising hoardings decorate the walls. And the old equipment is still used to issue tickets. Col Shepherd is more than just the driver. He's also the station master, paymaster, accountant, mechanic and chief engineer.
Thank you very much.
One of the very old rail motors remains unrestored. They're not game to send it away for any work. The last time one was sent off from Normanton, it was snapped up as a museum piece. They never saw it again. Where it once carried supplies, miners, equipment and heavily guarded gold shipments, the railway now carries mainly tourists. Probably the only reason the line survives today is that the track was laid on steel sleepers set directly on the ground with no foundations. It was cheap at the time and it lasted. Termites and wood rot made no difference. Floods covered the tracks, and when they went down, the line remained intact. Even today, 100 years later, it needs very little maintenance.
Well, I like to think that we're still here for the purpose of being a lifeline to the coast in the wet season, because between here and Croydon we have about an 80-kilometre stretch of dirt road with a lot of creek crossings, and it doesn't take long to put a couple of semis over. It's impassable. We virtually can run all the time.
This noisy bone shaker hasn't made a profit since 1907. But when it comes to maintaining a reminder of the past like this, profitability seems a petty consideration. The only place of any real size anywhere around the Gulf is Weipa, a new mining town set up in 1965. For such a new place, Weipa has a long history. It goes back more than 350 years, well before Captain Cook's official discovery of Australia. It was on the coast near Weipa that Europeans had some of their earliest contact with Australia. The Dutch navigator Jan Zoon came ashore here in his ship Duifken, and like other Dutch explorers who'd been here before Captain Cook, Jan Zoon moved on, apparently not the slightest bit impressed with what he'd discovered. The Dutch explorers would be astonished at what's now on the land they summed up as useless. And I have to admit, I was surprised when I first saw Weipa. For a mining town in a dry part of the tropics, everything is surprisingly green. Every tree and shrub was planted here and irrigated to make Weipa a pleasant place to live for workers in the world's largest bauxite mine. When Jan Zoon made notes about the red rocks and soil, no one knew it could be smelted down to form aluminium, one of the most useful metals of the 20th century. Nothing stops production. Even the tropical rainstorms of the wet season are only a short hiccup in what is normally a 24-hour operation. Massive machinery works in huge open-cut seams to dig out millions of tons of raw bauxite from the ground every year. Each load carried by these giant trucks weighs around 150 tons. The whole operation virtually scrapes the surface, and when they've finished, they restore the land. The patchwork pattern of mining and the early stages of restoration are clearly visible, with native trees and shrubs planted over the old open cuts. Towns and operations like this are an exception in the Gulf of Carpentaria. Up here, Weipa is a metropolis, but what the Gulf is all about is found in those places where the population is counted in dozens, or at most, in hundreds. If there's one thing that represents the Gulf of Carpentaria more than anything else, it's the fishing boat. The Gulf is fabulously rich in sea life. home to immense schools of prawns that were only discovered in the 1960s. At peak times, there'll be more than 100 trawlers scattered around the Gulf searching for banana, tiger, endeavour, white and half a dozen other varieties of prawn. At the time we visited, the banana prawn season had just finished and the trawlers were working through the night chasing the best quality catch of all, the tiger prawn.
You can see all these dots, these red dots?
Yeah.
Every one of those is a boat and everyone's after my tiger prawn, see?
On a modern boat like the Bralder, skipper Bruce Davey commands an operation that is just about as sophisticated as trawling can get.
Sometimes you've got to wonder whether you can justify the outlay with these money. Some of these radars, you can pay $15,000-$20,000 for a good radar there these days. The new GPS satellite system that's coming in, it'll be over $15,000-$16,000 for the plotter. That's a lot of money to have to outlay. But then that's the technical edge you can get there these days.
You've got to catch a lot of prawns to justify it.
You've got to catch a lot of prawns and only 6 months too.
Despite the gadgetry, when it comes right down to actually finding those elusive prawns, technology's come up with nothing to beat the method of try it and see. A small net called a try-shot is hauled in to see what's down there.
Must have gone a bit close to a bit of reef there too, I'd say. We've got a couple of reef fish.
What does this tell you when you pull the fly net out?
Well, we've had it down for 20 minutes, and so what we'll do now is count how many prawns they've got for the time. We do this all night. We're trying to find out where the prawns are the thickest, right? So we'll count them, the tigers and the endeavours too.
If the count is good, they know where to concentrate and they can usually rely on a big haul when they pull in the large nets and empty them on the sorting trays. The variety of sea life that comes up with the prawns is incredible. The catch may include anything from sea snakes to stingrays.
We'll get him straight back over the side again because we don't like to kill them or any other big monsters that we get these days. Try to get them back over the side.
For some reason, the trawlermen have a soft spot for a few of the creatures that are caught up in the nets. But generally, if it's not a prawn, they don't want it. And most of the fish have to wait until after the sorting to be dumped back in the water. I found that picking the prawns from the fish isn't as simple as it looks. They have to be graded by size, species and condition. After a while, that conveyor belt seems to move faster and faster.
There's breakfast for us. Yeah, nice breakfast.
It's all over in a few minutes. The catch has been sorted and the prawns, now product, are packaged for export.
Used to just put them in a box and sell them there once, and that was it. The kingies would go in with the tigers and the endeavours would be no grading or anything like that, whereas now we've really got to grade it, make sure that it's a hard shell and that it's a correct grade.
The Gulf is Australia's richest prawning ground, and the fishermen admit they went crazy when it was discovered just how many prawns could be pulled out of the Gulf. In the old days, they had nets out 24 hours a day, and a combination of hard work and good luck made more than a few fortunes. But in the space of 2 decades, they almost killed off their livelihood.
We are catching a heck of a lot less than what we were years ago, but that's pretty natural. It was an untouched resource before then. But the last 5 years, with all the restrictions and rules that have come in there, we've managed to stabilise things a bit there, and we're not giving the prawns as much a hiding as what we were, say, 5 years ago. Only fish for 6.5 months now instead of 12, and no more 24 houring. We're only allowed to go 14 hours a day, and 2 nets instead of 4. But the industry itself put forward these proposals, which was quite a big decision on its part, because don't forget, all these boats are a business, right? And everyone wants to catch as much as they can, but we realised that we're here for a while. We're not just here for a quick dollar, so it was in our own interest to bring these controls in, but still we managed to make quite a good dollar out of it, and it's a good lifestyle as well.
Oh,
The Bralder can carry up to $500,000 worth of prawns in its holds, and the Gulf can still support up to 100 trawlers at a time. While the fishermen have faced up to the question of limiting the catch of prawns, the damage done to other sea life is one of the controversial questions that never seem to have a definite answer. The huge amount of fish that comes up with the prawns goes back over the side, and no one really knows how many of them survive their outing on the deck of a trawler. But one side effect has been a population explosion of bird life. Brown boobies follow the trawlers constantly, feasting on the rejects from the catch. They spend most of their life at sea and only go back to land for breeding and nesting. At the height of the breeding season, the crowd of birds on Man O' War Island is incredible. Most of these baby birds once had a brother or sister. The booby lays 2 eggs. But when they hatch, the parent cares only for one bird, and the other chick usually dies of neglect. The favoured chick is left alone for long periods while the parents are out fishing. And even at this cute and clumsy stage, the young booby needs its well-developed sense of self-preservation. Man O' War Island is also the final resting place of a shipwreck, an Asian boat caught poaching in the Gulf. Trawlermen have renamed the ship with their own comment on its activities. This tiny speck of land is one of very few islands that are found any distance from the coastline. They're visited only rarely, and their remoteness ensures they'll always belong to the seabirds.